Hi everyone and welcome along to Sonic Academy. I'm Chris Agnelli and today we bring you another big interview. We're joined by one of the main guys on Anjunabeats and none other than Maor Levi, who joins us on Skype now all the way from San Diego. Are you there, Maor?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm not too bad. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I've just been following you on Facebook and I know that you're knee deep in trying to create some new stuff for new Anjunabeats albums and stuff, so thank you very much for taking time out. Today we're going to be chatting about sort of your productions, Trance 2.0, where you started, and just trying to delve into the world of your techniques and all the different sort of things that we can drag out of that. Just quickly before we start, give us a potted history of your career so far. Where's it all start?
It all started in Israel, obviously, when I was born and raised, and it all started when I started listening to. Started from rock and metal. Used to listen to Rage Against the Machine, The Offspring as a little kid, and then I found out about Infected Mushroom and Yahel and a few other local DJs in Israel. They used to be really big into psytrance music. So I kind of like got into all this music from psytrance, and then I started. I figured who Tiesto was when I first saw his compilations, Magic and Space Age and In Search of Sunrise. And, after like listening to all that stuff, I kind of like started to dig this music and kind of leave, rock and metal and all that stuff I used to listen to behind me, and, delve deeper into electronic music, basically.
And were you musical from a very young age? Were you training in piano, or then it was just when you heard this sort of psych trance you thought, right, I'm going to get keyboards and start?
Yeah, it was. Well, I never had really any musical background. I can't play any instrument. I used to learn like really basic music lessons in school, but really basic. Like you can't really get anything out of it, to be honest. I used to play a xylophone, if that counts.
that comes in handy in trance, doesn't it?
But yeah, I never really had any music like theory, or any history. Like my parents didn't really play anything. They like music, but It just happened one day that I just got into I want to learn how they make all this stuff.
Yeah, and when you talk about the scene, there was in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a really big healthy scene in Israel. And was it in your local town, or was it more in Tel Aviv, or how far away was your local town from Tel Aviv and stuff?
Well, Israel is really small, and I live in the south in a city called Ashkelon. It's like 40 minutes away from Tel Aviv, so everything is just really, really close. But most of the parties, and still going, is in Tel Aviv. That's where everything happens. Sometimes in Eilat. It's like it's the southern city in Israel. It's like the tourist city.
Yeah, the resort, isn't it, city?
Yeah, it's like in the let's take just a bunch of hotels and put them in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
and you'll get a lot. But there's a lot of parties there. Usually Tiesto used to play there a lot, and they used to do a festival every year, and Tiesto used to play. It's called Sundance, and the owners change all the time, but it's still called like Blue for Dance or Sundance. It's always going to be dance.
Yeah. And do you think it's something to do with the region, the hardship that people go through in the region? Is it the escapism of the parties that really fueled dance music in that area?
I think it's because Israel is kind of lacking dance music like it used to be these days. So that's why people are kind of like, I don't know, people lost it, I think. I mean, I personally think that, ever since mainstream broke into the world and in such a high frequency, people kind of lost the sense of what old school sounds like. But I got to say, actually, for considering the time that passed ever since, we still have a lot of techno and deep house going really strong in Israel. And that's pretty much like very old school,
Mm-hmm.
It's not a full-on trance party, but,
Well, let's get stuck into the sort of technical, which we all want to know. What's your software of choice? What's your DAW?
FL Studio, Fruity Loops. I started with FL Studio, and I didn't change ever since.
You're never tempted by Ableton, Logic, or this is?
I tried all those, and I know how to use Cubase, Logic, Pro Tools a little, Ableton. I use Ableton just to do my live podcast, my radio show. It's easy to edit tracks and warp them and do like transitions and voiceovers and everything. A lot easier than FL Studio, but that's pretty much what I do with Ableton. Just use it for my radio shows and edits.
And so take us to the. You're sitting with a blank screen. where do you start? Do you start with beats? Do you mess about with chords? Do you program with a mouse? Do you select a sound and go, right, I'm inspired by this sound, or do you bring a track in and deconstruct it? What's the process?
I love like testing new samples. So that is usually what gets me inspired. But I usually will start with the drums and effects, just to like start building the track and get into the getting into the breakdown, a melodic part or whatever. And pretty much I'm starting every. I don't really save too many melodies. Like I just pretty much play everything while I'm working on the project. Like I just come up with an idea.
And
it's
sorry, you drums. What's your sort of main drums? Where do you get the samples from? Do you use different drum machines? Do you have a plug-in chain that you use on drums? Do you bus them, or what's the process there?
Again, depends on where the kick or the snare or the clap came from. I mean, if I sample the snare from a track, I know that I didn't really I shouldn't really touch it that much. Shouldn't really like adjust it. Maybe just tiny little adjustments because it's already processed and went through a bunch of compressors and limiters. But let's say I'm using a lot of one shots. Like I love to create my own loops, and it's really easy on FL Studio. It's like I think it's the best DAW for samples. But if you have like a sample from a sample pack, then you might want to tweak it. Compress, limit, whatever.
And do you bus everything or do you just keep everything on separate tracks, or what's the process?
No, the funny thing is I never bus anything.
Okay.
Like I love like putting everything on, like every synth, every kick, every percussion on on a different channel.
Right, and then
Gives them freedom.
And just process those channels just separately. There's no main.
Yeah. There's just I work into a limiter. Like I'll put a limiter on the master channel that is limited to 0 dB, but I'm gonna work into the limiter. But back in the day, I didn't really put anything on the master, but I still did the same thing. Everything has its own channel. I think it just makes me it just gives me more freedom. I think the bus channel is kind of limiting you at some point.
What's the limiter? What would be the limiter you use on the output?
I came up with. I used to use the Waves L2, and not too long ago I came up with. My friend showed me this limiter. It's called Invisible Limiter, but AOM.
Right.
It's a really incredible tool because I think it's the only limiter that actually allows you to push the tracks as much as you can without distortion.
Yeah.
And everything is loud these days, but it's a really like transparent and limiter.
How do you feel about the loudness wars that goes on? Are you one of these guys that just tries to ram everything as loud as it can, or do you try and sort of keep things back and get a bit more dynamics into the track, or what's your views on that?
I think loudness war came because a lot of tracks these days are really loud. Like the sounds being used are naturally loud, like like dubstep bass lines or like really really like sharp buzzy super saws. So you kind of your track is going to be loud anyways. I mean,
but your productions are there's an intricacy to them. There's lots of detail in there that with dubstep it's all about aggression and it's about big drums, big buzzy bass lines, and very little else. Whereas your stuff there's a lot of detail in there that would just get lost. How do you prioritize those elements?
Well, pretty much as I said earlier, because I don't bust things, I can actually like individually just like decrease and balance things, all the little things in the mix that can actually affect all the how everything sounds when they glued. But I'll be honest, I think like let's say you have a breakdown you built into the drop, and there's a lot of things that once you're going to play the drop you won't hear them. So I would say get rid of as much as things as possible if you know that your, let's say, drop is busy enough. You know? I just think like balance and getting rid of things can actually get you like clean, sharp mix.
And do you mix? Is it literally balance with the mouse, or do you have some sort of controller that you use, faders, or
everything is with the mouse? I had some hardware back in the day, and I sold everything because I think everything is just too good today. I had synths, I had compressors and everything, and I sold everything because I think digital stuff is just it's getting there.
It definitely is getting there. So you've got drums going, you've got a loop that you really like, and it's sort of processed, and you've got a limiter over the output. What's the next step? Is it bassline? Is it, how do you go about? I mean, you're very musical. How do you go about writing that stuff?
Do you mean like mastering everything? Or
No, but what's the next process? You got your drums. How do you come up with the chord sequences? How do you come up with the melody, the arpeggios? What's
usually
the next?
I start with like chords. I would play chords. I have a MIDI keyboard. I don't really use it. I use my mouse all the time.
Yeah.
But I will start with like chords, and then pretty much I have this plugin called the Improvisator. It's a free plugin. What it does is basically MIDI routing. So it has pretty much every key and chord possible, and it just gives you ideas. Like you run through keys. It's like basically like what's this website called? When Hook Theory. You know
Yeah. We know Hook Theory. Yes,
It's pretty much like Hook Theory in a plugin. So you route a VST to this thing, and you just run between chords.
Yeah.
And that gives you some ideas. And sometimes I can like take a melody from an old track of mine, sample it, reverse it, and then get an idea. Just from the reverse melody, but it's still different.
And going to your productions, how did you learn? What was the sort of how did you feel you went from bedroom producer to being signed to Anjunabeats? What was the key moment that changed all that for you? What was the production?
There's an interesting story, but I signed my first record when I was 15 to a label called Lost Language in the UK. Really old school label.
Yeah, we know it. I know it very well.
Yeah, Solar Stone, Space Maneuvers, the MN War, really classic label. And then I used to talk with a producer named Oscar Khan. He used to be like really big on Cold Harbor. Used to release progressive trance. So he actually was the A&R for Anjunabeats when it was just formed.
Yeah.
And I knew him, so he told me like, listen, if you have new stuff to send, just send over, because we're starting this deep division for Anjunabeats. So I did send my first track, and they liked it. And ever since I signed Lital back in 2005, ever since I'm just like, I couldn't really find any other great label to work with and actually, get all this support. So.
And I mean, have you got a long-term deal with Anjunabeats? Is it just a really healthy relationship and just keep going?
It's really healthy. It took a few years, just to start and develop it and everything. But I think the reason why I stick to them is because, first of all, they do their job properly compared to other labels, and they've been massive supporters of my stuff, and I don't see any reason why I should work with other people.
Cool. Going back to the sort of productions, one track that we listened to here at Sonic Academy quite a bit in the studio, and we're quite blown away, was the Gabble and Dresden remix. And it was that wall of sound that you achieved. It was just incredible. How do you get that wall of sound, basically?
Wall of sound? Do you refer to my smashed master?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It was when it kicked in with that sort of just the main sort of chorus was just solid and quite incredible to listen to. And I encourage anybody that's watching this to go on to Spotify or go and play it back or pay it back.
Yeah, play it back.
Play it back by Gabble and Dresden, and go and just listen to that remix. And how do you achieve that solidness? That sort of, is it layering or what?
Yeah, I think the key is layering and right stereo imaging, especially with synths. With melodic synths. I would suggest like layer like different sounds, like not similar sounds to each other, because then you can get like weird phasing. But what it does, if you layer different sound as possible, you get more stereo, and then some EQ on the highs, even stereo image like 4 kilohertz above. Usually if you're gonna stereo image the highs on those sounds, you can get like nice stereo and kind of like can take over some parts in the mix. Obviously not go crazy with it, but I think this is pretty much this, and maybe like a really solid I would suggest analog bass line, maybe for the sub, and then you have like mid layers for the bass.
So how many pads would that layer? How many pads would be in that layer?
I think it has 3 layers together, obviously running through different channels, different effects.
Would you have a fizzy top that's kind of all the lows cut out, a sort of MIDI stuff that's probably super saw, loads of voices and detuned, and then something a bit upper mid? Is that correct? Is that?
Yep, exactly. That's how I do it. Just layers, high, mid, and low. Obviously, you can play around with the sound, see whatever sounds good. But I think it's also, if you use saturators, I would suggest using like soft saturation on synths. It kind of gives it this aggressiveness that if not necessarily aggressiveness, but it's kind of like makes it more stand out in the mix.
So like, is it tape saturation you're using?
It's like really like mild saturation.
Okay.
Nothing that's gonna affect the sound that much, but it works. Like if you compare it without the saturation, you can hear the differences.
And what about the bottom end then? That take you, is it like just a sine wave sub, and then some sort of upper mids, just and do you use a lot of EQ? Do you sculpt things out of the way, surgical EQ?
I'll be honest.
No.
On my sub basses or in general, I don't really know how to use equalizer and compressor. I trust my ears.
Yeah.
But I would suggest, like, say for sub bass lines, if you have a fat kick that has a lot of low end, obviously make some room for the bass.
Yeah.
Because you want the kick to clash with the bass. So yeah, you can cut some low end. Usually I cut like 30 to 25 on that part. I know the 25 hertz is really like unneeded frequency, which kind of can change a lot. So I would do that from what I know. But again, usually I would trust my ears. I don't really touch that much, I'll be honest.
And what other effects would you use on the pads? Do you use any sort of phasers, chorus? What what other stuff do you?
Yeah, sometimes chorus and reverb a lot, and yeah, just pretty much run everything through a sidechain because nothing is possible without sidechain these days.
And what do you use LFO tool, or do you use Nicky Romero?
I used to use a LFO tool and actually the FLP controller, but now actually Nicky Romero came up with the Kickstart, which is pretty much like I'm familiar with the Volume Shaper, which is pretty much similar plugin, but the Kickstart is just easy because it just presets and you have everything on the go. And
you enjoy using that. It's just a simpler process. What do you look for in a reverb? What's your sort of go-to reverb?
Funnily enough, the built-in Reverb 2 in FL Studio.
Right.
It's simple. It sounds good, and sometimes I do convolving. This is like I got into convolving lately, and it's really interesting.
And what are you deconvolving? Are you taking samples? Are you going out and doing samples, or are you just?
I take like tails of all kind of effects. Like I can take a vocal tail or a white noise tail or anything like that, and just drag it in the convolver, and you get like a really cool reverb, kind of like. You design your own room, let's say.
Okay, cool. And
that's interesting, yeah.
Another sort of big important part of your productions is white noise. How do you use that to great effect?
Pretty much, if I have a draw part or a bass part, I'm gonna run a white noise through the whole thing all the time, and give it some stereo. So it's kind of like there is a white noise there, but it's not too harsh. It's like it's behind everything, but you can still hear it and feel it, but. It sounds glued with everything,
And what's generating the white noise? Do you have is it silent or is it just internal?
Just a sample.
Sample of white noise, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a really like basic.
And do you have that? Do you have that running continuously, or do you use it as a long sidechain sort of crashy smoke machine effect? I think sort of shh. Is that what you're trying to achieve?
Pretty much high pass it, and I put like really light sidechain on it. Just really light, so you can have like some groove. But other than that, I just high pass it and cut some high end if it's too harsh.
Cool.
And use a chorus.
You use a chorus on the
white noise.
On the white noise, cool. People think I'm probing with in-depth questions, but we're really actually trying to find out for ourselves what you're trying to pick apart your productions. The other thing that you're kind of known for, and is your collaborations. Is this something that you actively seek out? Do you relish working with other people, bouncing ideas off other people? Is that something you really get into?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I love working alone because no one really know how I work. I mean, I'm a mess. I never label things, but I like it. I mean, I'm all over the place with my projects, but
you're a man after my own heart. I don't label anything, and I've had to get really sort of strict with labeling things because it's just a disaster zone if anybody else tries to come in and do anything. But yeah, no, it's because I understand that you're trying so hard just to get stuff out the door, and you're DJing, and you're doing a DJ mix, and you're doing a radio show, and you have people like us calling you up and disturbing your day. So it's probably is it laziness, or is it just you get into a zone and you just want to create?
Exactly. I'm getting in the zone. I'm just kind of like I'm just going, and I pretty much I got used to work like that. I've been working like that for years. But seeing other producers, if you collaborate with someone, seeing how other producers work, it's kind of inspiring and gives you more ideas. I love collaborating. I have a few collaborations coming with vocalist and with Noin and Rad when Bruce is in the other room just blaring music. Um, we have a collaboration coming hopefully this year, well, soon I hope. And yeah, we have some remixes coming. I have some side projects, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff going, a lot of stuff.
And I mean, you're on FL Studio. How do the collabs? How do they work? Is it Dropbox, WAV files? Do people work on Ableton? How does it get done?
Well, usually what I'll do is if I'm collaborating with someone who works on Logic or Ableton or Cubase or whatever, we're gonna open a Dropbox and just throw some files there. Or if we're in the same studio, we're probably gonna rent a place and hook our computers, our laptops into the system and just start running ideas and pretty much like decide between us who's gonna choose the track. Who's gonna build the track?
Yeah.
Usually, I end up building the tracks because it's just really easy in FL Studio. You can do a lot of stuff with samples. But again, while I'm building the track, there's the guy who I'm collaborating with sitting next to me and still running through some ideas while I'm building it. So kind of really, really effective way to work, I think.
And would you collaborate, say, with Northern Rad? Would they be what software are they using?
They work with Logic, and but we went to a studio to do this collaboration, and we did what I told you just now.
Yeah.
2 laptops hooking to the same system, and we just run through ideas, bass lines, and we sync sometimes. And if I'm going to play a kick drum, he's going to play a bass from his computer, kind of like sync and get some ideas.
So how are you syncing the two different softwares?
It's just like hitting the spacebar on the right.
Okay, so it's almost like DJing. You're just running each sequencer at 128 or 130 and just trying to see. I think hopefully in the next couple of years somebody's going to crack that nut where they're going to have a real open platform for collaborating. It's becoming a big thing for producers, to collaborate.
There's actually a program with ImageLine. It's called Collab, but it's basically online thing that you can both work on the same project. It's kind of incredible. I mean, I never really got into it, but I think there's something with Ableton that you can actually sync between 2 computers. I'm not sure.
There's
like a MIDI thing.
Yeah, there is some sort of, but it hasn't solved the problem between Logic, Ableton, FL Studio, and. So the other area that's you've been very prolific is remixing. Do you find remixing easy? Do you find it hard? Do you enjoy it as a sort of escapism from your own productions? What's your views on it?
I think remixing always going to be really easy compared to originals. I mean, especially if you're a perfectionist. Every producer is a perfectionist, and it's really hard to come up with something original these days. I think everything sounds really recycled. Remixing is just it's pretty much like gives you stuff to work with, so you get inspired quickly. It's like you're gonna get an acapella from a singer, and then you're gonna come up with ideas straight away. That's pretty much how I feel about remixing. I just get an idea and I'm just like, okay, I know what I'm gonna do next.
So when do you listen to the original and immediately form, right, this is how I'm going to treat this remix? Do you know where it's going to end up?
Yeah, usually I listen to the original to get some ideas to get to the picture of the basic track. But what I'll do is I'm one of those people that I'm not going to remix it and take the stems and just put different drums on them. I'm going to actually do something completely new and give the vocal or the synth or whatever is the signature hook in that track a different vibe. That's what I did always.
And the Gabriel Dresden remix, you stayed pretty true to the vocal. Yeah, there's a lot of remixers out there, to my mind, that can't work with vocals, so they take one line, chop it up, and sort of distort it. But you shape the remix very much around that vocal, and I think the remix they were so impressed with, they went and cut the 7-inch to it. So how do you do vocals become very? Are you quite kind of precious about them?
Well, the vocals were easy because there was not too many vocals there. I mean, usually when I get a full-on vocal track, I'm kind of like trying to get rid of a lot of usually I'll work with the chorus and bridge maybe. But also, I will just try to make the track or the remix to make sense still to the original. Like, I'm not just gonna bring the chorus out of nowhere. I'm just gonna build it in a way that it just sounds natural.
And why do you sort of just the chorus and bridge? Do you is it a club thing? Is it a DJ thing, or what? Is it just that's the hook and that's what you just wanted to bring out the best in the song?
I think it's a DJ thing, but I mean, if you get too many vocals, pretty much, I think the track's sounding a bit more radio friendly rather than DJ friendly.
Okay.
Because you have a verse, you have a bridge, you have a chorus, you have more vocals, and it's kind of like it's not giving you any room to actually work with synths and melodies. You know, it's kind of like, and you have to like bound your arrangement on the vocal. So it kind of makes things difficult for you. And, you know, when I record vocals, usually I don't really ask for a full-on verse and bridge and extra vocals. Usually what I want is a catchy top line, because I think people are impatient these days. You know, they just want this one hook and they can sing it. And especially in electronic music, yeah. Obviously not in other styles, but that's what I feel about it, I think.
And that's brings me on to something, you know, I was going through some old stuff last week and I found a mix. I think it was a remix I'd done, and it was 11 minutes 45 seconds long. And I've recently done a track that was, you know, I had to edit down to 6 minutes 30, and I was just going, this is just an extended radio edit. You know, I mean, tracks have become really, really short. How do you find you can express yourself within that time frame easy enough?
Well, I still build my track, you know, just to make them DJ friendly again with an outro and intro. So it's kind of like it's not going to be that short. But sadly, you know, people these days are like forgetting about the DJ side, and it makes a lot of DJs, you know, hard work of mixing things. So you have to do edits and everything. I mean, there's no like a long intro for you to mix anymore or a long outro. So you have to edit and do it yourself. I'm still trying to, you know, to stay old school with my arrangement and make it a bit long. Like usually my tracks end up in like 6:20, sometimes 5:30, but I never really went below 5.
Because I still find 5:30 incredible. I mean, it doesn't give me enough time to go to the toilet and come back. You know.
I think again.
I mean, if you have a minute intro for the DJ and a minute outro, so you really are talking about 3 minutes of the track in the center. You know, there's not that much. So it's real bam, bam, bam. No, you know, there's no.
Yeah, I think it's just because people are impatient and they just want to hear things. Like people get really impatient in a club. Like if you're gonna play the same track, then it's gonna have 2 breakdowns, and it's pretty much going back to the same thing. People will be like, okay, we get it, move on.
Yeah.
That's think what you learn as being a DJ. I mean, these days at least.
I think, definitely being a DJ does, you do get to see what works on the dance floor, what's not working on the dance floor nowadays. And I think it's really important if you're going to be a producer to try and get out and do some DJing. Also, the big thing that changed as well, you know, I mean, your average DJ set nowadays is what, 1 hour?
2 hours sometimes.
2 hours, but would the norm be an hour, or would you normally get 2 hours?
Normally, if you're headlining, it will be like 2 hours, 2 hours and a half, sometimes an hour and a half. But an hour is kind of like, I don't know, maybe if I'm playing a small club or something.
Yeah.
Or if I'm opening for someone.
So it is kind of hard. You're going in and you're just trying to bash out as much as you can in that 1 hour, and that you know, and everything is condensed. Where do you see the future? What's sort of in the pipeline? Is there an album coming? You know, is it with Anjunabeats?
Well, I started my album like 4 times in the past 4 years, and I always scrapped it because I learned new things and improving. So, you know, hopefully I can step. I pretty much have like 5 singles in the works now, and I'm pretty sure that they're gonna see an album release, but it's still kind of far away. I mean, I'm still trying to put more like different stuff to this album. I want to actually find time and sit and work on this album, and I don't want to just like work on it on the road and everything. Mm-hmm. I like sitting in the studio. I don't like, you know, working on my laptop when I'm on the road. I like sitting in my space and, you know, sit and think and come up with different stuff.
With being a sort of touring DJ, is it difficult to get time to sit in the studio and just get space to sit in the studio, or do you clear schedules sometimes?
Yeah, I do clear schedules, and I just think, you know, I can't. There's something about being on the road that just doesn't inspire you. I mean, as in to sit on your computer, you don't really get the time between flights and the club, and you know, and going back to sleep and then getting up again. I think I found what really inspiring is just like peace. You know, just like sit down and relax, not partying. I like my space. I like to calm down after a hectic weekend.
So it's back to the studio. You chill out for Sunday or Monday, and then get into the studio on Tuesday, Wednesday, pack the bags Thursday, and fly.
I cherish my studio days. That's for sure.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure and a real insight into your world and your productions, and thank you very much for sharing. Guys, I hope you all got something for this from this. And Maor Levi, I thank you again for joining us, and hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you.